Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. On behalf of the World Council of Muslims for Interfaith Relations, I welcome all of you and grateful to our presenter, Mufti Abdul Qadir Barkatulla Sahib, who is joining us from London, UK. Many of you may know him, but I have a short introduction. Mufti Barkatulla Sahib is well grounded in Islamic education. He has his initial education at Darul Uloom Deoband, India, from where he has both Almiyat and Fazilat as well as IFTA degrees. And currently, he is Sharia advisor to many banks and financial institutions in the UK and Europe. Also, a leading scholar and Sharia advisor to many Islamic organizations in UK and Europe and as well as in Asia. He has degrees from United Kingdom. He is one of the pioneers of Islamic database development in Islamic fiqh, Islamic law, as well as in Quran and Hadith database. He is a host of a popular program on Islam Channel and many other channels in Britain, and also a board member of WCMIR. I will request that please post your questions and comments on the chat box, because the presentation will take about an hour, and then we will have plenty of time for questions and comments. But I will request that please post your questions and comments on the chat box rather than asking in person, so that Mufti Sahib can read the questions and answer accordingly, inshallah. So Mufti Sahib, now the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya wal Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and peace and blessings be upon Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It is a honor, and I'm thankful to the WCMIR that this opportunity is given, and it is an open forum for all over the world, for all the professionals to listen to our deliberations and share their comments, and together we progress, inshallah. So today's topic, as it is the finance, and let me put a disclaimer before I start that I'm not representing here any bank or any financial institution. I am primarily a Mufti and Sharia advisor to general public and the families. And it happened to be that I became an advisor to the Islamic financial institutions across the world. So the topic is Islamic finance, principles and practice. So, and World Council of Muslims for Interfaith Relationship is hosting this on this platform, and hopefully it will be useful launching pad for future such discussions. So the outline I will present first of all, that what is the agenda, what we are going to discuss today. First of all, let us be realistic and understand that the current world where we live is not a result of just few decades of development, but few centuries of development. The financial world and financial reality and the economic world and economic reality which we are living is not. So that will be background of 19th and 20th century or even before. Then we will start our discussion that what is Sharia and what is the scope of Sharia, how do we perceive Sharia, and then what are the maqasid and goal points of Sharia in food and finance, and of course in personal life also. Then I will go to simple maxims and principles, halal and haram, simple do's and don'ts and do's in financial matters. Then uh, beyond the commandments of Sharia, then regulatory and practical constraints which exist in the market and which limit or constrain our full implementation Sharia. And then, of course, summary of Islamic value system. Inshallah, I'll share with you to take away some point that finance is not exempt from the Sharia, and one cannot claim that financial matters are beyond the uh, remit of Sharia. So the Sharia scholars should not have any opinion about that and should not pass judgment. They do not understand realities. We are required to be Muslim totally. So let us start with the reality check that the world we are here in US and Europe and UK, this world has taken nearly 350 to 400 years of development, merchant trading, financing and banking, international trade and colonization. The current world is a mixture of conceptual, practical, commercial and political development. And all the current financial world, the economy and the banking system is a result of originating in Europe, especially in Italy. And similarly, the insurance and other things have been developed here. So it's development to completely outside the homeland of Islam, Muslims, and it developed during the decline of the Islamic world. So if we can see that the goldsmiths in London and Europe, they used to issue the receipt of the deposit of gold, and that created the check system, and then it developed into the current fiat money, the paper money. So slowly, it has gone through several phases. I'm not here to uh, give you a lecture about the development of fiat money. You can enlighten yourself on the net. So the capitalist and socialist systems developed during last 100 and 150 years, and two distinct economic systems based on the historical and cultural and religious experiences of Europe came to be. And this coincided with the decline of the Muslim empire and emergence of colonial powers such as, you know, the European powers who colonized Africa and British who colonized Africa and Asia and America. So the Muslim lands were under colonial rules. Any development, modern development, whether it's physical or financial, took place during that time. So post-colonial bounce back and new startups we are starting here like after the decline of several and maybe 100 years or so. Khilafah ended in 1924. So it's nearly 100 years that we are without the umbrella of any Islamic political or uh, political system or legal system. So this is the background, historical context background. In this background, it is appropriate to understand where do we stand now here in UK, United States, and Europe. So the, the after Second World War, the post-colonial era starts. Before that, anything which has developed in the Muslim lands, they were forced and dictated by the colonial powers, whether it is in North Africa, whether it is in the Middle East, or whether it's the Far East or Southeast Asia. Like half of the world maybe were force-fed this system of the current financial system. But let us understand that Islamic system of rituals and Islamic systems of other interactions with the world, trade and social things, it cannot be devoid of financial world. So Naturally, the Hajj has been always there. And for Hajj, you need to develop a lifelong savings. So naturally, people, Muslims were saving for Hajj. Either they are under pillows or under mattresses, or then some people thought out that why not deploy that money which is saved for Hajj and Umrah. So Hajj Tabung in Malaysia in 1960s came into the being to encourage that if Hajis, potential Hajis can put their money into a saving pot, then instead of 20-year wait, they will be able to go for Hajj 15 years because of the income generated by it. So Hajj Tabung in 1960s started from the Hajj savings. Nasir Social Bank started as a poor people's bank, yeah, in 60s in Egypt. And then I, when I was in Turkey, I was informed that there was a bank Tijarat 1913 was established under the Khilafah, but under the Kamal Ataturk post Khilafah, it collapsed. No, it was turned into the interest bank, Bank Tijara, which was completely Islamic bank under the Khilafah, but then it turned into the interest bank, and then eventually, before Second World War, around Second World War time, it even collapsed as a basis of interest-based bank also. So the historical development has been only from 1950s and 60s, any substantial development. Islamic Development Bank, intergovernmental bank of 56 Muslim countries who or 50 or so Muslim countries who were free at that time, post-colonial, they established Islamic Development Bank. In 1975, Dubai Islamic Bank was established in the heart of the Gulf from the uh, these are just few beginnings, but there were everywhere like small scale microfinances were there in Southeast Asia everywhere, even under British or post-British colonial time. So there were small efforts, but then there were organized and corporate efforts also, which they are still thriving. So there is a only short history of 50 or 60 years of development of the some effort within the context of the capitalist system, within the Western system, to develop some Islamic values and enforce them in the corporate world and the financial world. With this, like there is just a brief summary of uh, few steps like 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, and 2008. 2008 was the financial crisis time. Up to the point of 2008 financial crisis, the Islamic banking was really thriving and uh, compositely developing 15% every year in Far East and Southeast Asia and in the Gulf. But then, of course, financial crisis did put some brake to the growth, but it also gave it some prominent the value-based system and value-based system of financial dealings and ethical-based system is the way ahead because the capitalism is going uncontrolled and unkind and uh, distribution of wealth and everything is really the world is becoming more and more unequal place. It's like the Wall Street demonstration that we are 99%. One placard says that only 1% people control the whole world resources, and we 99% people are subject of the corporate financial world, economic and capitalist world. So these are just the milestones of slowly developing some Islamic ethos-based Sharia products. Not covers it doesn't cover each and every need of all the societies, Muslim societies or individuals and businessmen, but it at least takes the some core things to uh, to cater. So then, uh, after analyzing the background and historical development of current Islamic financial system, which is still developing, and at the backdrop of like 350 years, our development is only 70 years. So it is slowly getting prominence. So before we see how Sharia can be practiced within the context of capitalist system, within the context of the current regulatory system. We have to understand what is Sharia. Sharia is not a coded law. Sharia is a set of principles and guidelines driven from the primary and secondary sources of Islam. So Sharia, by definition, is uh, like a ecosystem, moral system, and the legal framework is taken out of those morality, based on their morality, and so it is like a contextual. All the current, you know, the intelligentsia and scholars, whatever they understand the applications and implications of Sharia guidelines into the current situation, given the constraint, given the parameters which we are allowed to operate, because we are not starting from the fresh, open and blank board. So what I uh, perceive the Sharia is like a virtual jurisdiction. It's a virtual. There's no Sharia police across the globe to enforce Sharia law or anything. Only the moral force. So it's widely adhered by vast majority of Muslims across the globe. And Sharia transcends national jurisdiction and boundaries. So Sharia is like such a transparent thing which is really can be adopted and practiced in each and every given situation, whether we are as a political control or a subject, whether you are minority or majority. So Sharia is not only govern just faith and worship type rituals, prayer, fasting, faith, and zakat and pilgrimage. It's not only that, but it also covers economic, social, political, and cultural aspect. And this is understood and acknowledged by all parties, Muslims and non-Muslims. Some people think that finance is beyond the jurisdiction of Sharia and they just freely deal with whatever they can do. But Sharia can be understood as an extra layer of jurisdiction in a multi-layer world of regulations and authorities. So for corporate world, it's very easy to adjust to Sharia because they are used to adjusting various regulations. Like American banks operating in Europe have to abide not just by American law, but to the European law also, the jurisdiction and demography. So any financial system, economic system geared for Muslims or Muslim land or Muslim culturally oriented people, it should adhere to the Sharia. But now the challenge has become that whether it is a good value proposition for non-Muslims also, and it is proving in Far East and some other places that non-Muslims are also attracted to the ethical values of Islamic financial system. So this is just the background about Sharia. Sharia is not fixed across the globe. Sharia is not a coded law, but it is a set of principles which is interpreted in each and every jurisdiction depending on the possibilities and opportunities. So before I proceed any further, what I thought that it will be good to really share with you some philosophical underpinning for Islamic financial dealing. So we, Islam and Sharia, does not really condemn the financial world or does not negate the trade and global, activities, but according to Quran, is financial world and property and assets are strategic
Join the meeting.
strategic value of life, and there are various descriptions to support that mal is also a strategic asset. It is also a risk factor, and it is also a tempting factor, and it may uh, enhance you or destroy you depending how you deal with finance. And there is a connection between faith and morality. The connection with of finance with faith and morality. I mean, there is put your money where your mouth is. So if we confess shahada and we uh, claim to help poor, and so our finances should be directed towards. So there is a two-way connection between faith and belief and finances. And then, of course, Sharia also governs the ways of earning, ways of distribution, ways of like other things. So, unlawful enrichments or unethical ways of earning is not allowed. That is very, very clear. So, there are guidelines about production, consumption, circulation, and distribution of resources and assets. So finance means not just the money, but it represents all the resources which sustain life. And then there are obligatory, mandatory rights associated with money and finances. And then there are voluntary rights and things associated with money. And of course, there are so many other ways of like deploying the financial resources to earn our not just this worldly life, but hereafter. So these are the like philosophical foundations. I have slides for each one to substantiate from Quran and Sunnah, but I will defer it for some other time. But after mentioning this, just as an example, how finance is related with our morality and our faith is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that finance is the core support of life. Then it is a fitna for you personally and family. And then if you do not spend whatever you love, like the lan tanalul birr, then you cannot uh, uh, achieve the love of Allah until you sacrifice your beloved money or assets and properties in the ways of Allah. And then apart from giving it for the sake of Allah and for our akhirah, then there is a don't eat each other's property without consent and without fair trade and without justice. So the second commandment in Surah An-Nisa is that la ta'kulu amwalakum. Don't acquire and uh, and earn money from unlawful means. Similarly, it is they are condemned that those who acquire money and assets and business on unscrupulous measurement, they will be doomed on the day of judgment. It's called mutaffifin, those who cut in the undersale or oversale in the trading business. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, it's very clear. We may have heard that a person who is not trustworthy, not reliable, does not have integrity, he has no faith. And those who do not adhere to their like commitment and contracts, they have no religiosity, they have no religious integrity. So iman and religion is directly or inversely connected with our behavior in finance and money matters and property matters. These are just some examples, and there are multi of them. But beauty is that the Sharia synthesizes with the world's universal value, like whatever is the humanly and philosophically thought to be good for the humanity, Sharia also approves it. So, like real activities should be supported, ethical boundaries should be observed, partnership and distribution and mass participants should be encouraged, and proper governance rules and should be always there. So these are also generally and universally acknowledged values, but its implementation is really patchy across the globe. And the last financial crisis of 2008, with the collapse of Lehman Brothers, and then the ripple effect across the globe has really woken up the capitalist system and the financial system. And there are many tweaks and adjustments which are being done at the moment. And at the peak of the financial crisis, some religious groups, and it will be interesting for our World Council that even the Vatican at that time in their newsletter said to get out of the 2008 financial crisis, we might have to adhere to some strict financial ethics, which is generally available in Islamic finance. And Islamic finance and ethical finance, socialist ethical finance, are meeting at various points. Mostly there are like 70 to 80% common denominators, although the socialist ethical values are based on their socialism, but our ethical values are based on divine guidance. This is the difference. But we end up sharing the same value. So universal value, ethical values, and green finance or green values are all compatible and based on Sharia guidelines also. So before we proceed any further to examine the reality, among the principles, just as an example, that Sharia maxium mean general rules, rule of thumb, they are very universal. One thing which I have not put it here, which you can take it from me, that the Sharia guidelines for the rituals is prescriptive, that whatever is being sanctioned is only allowed, but the opposite is true in the financial world, that everything is allowed except what is prohibited. So the total maximum of rituals and muamalat and financials are completely different different philosophical underpinning. So the first maxim is that in trade, business, and finance, every activity and every useful things are allowed. Only whatever is the red line drawn based on morality, they are not allowed. So all useful economic activity is permissible unless explicitly prohibited. Yeah? So the permissibility is the domain and prohibition is exception. Yeah? And deployment of funds and not leaving idle. So for instance, if we have resources, even keeping it idle is frowned upon by Sharia, that those who gather gold and silver and accumulate their bank balance, they are going to be tormented with this. Yeah? So the deployment and accumulation of wealth is discouraged. So investment and putting it on useful things, useful production is correct. Sharing of risk and reward. So like mass sharing of risk and reward is encouraged rather than one party shifting their uh, risk to other parties. Unjustifiable relationship, imbalanced relationship of like shifting the risk and one party getting security, other party getting exposure. So it's like 1% and 90%. So 1% capitalist having security and 99% people being exposed to all type of risk. Yeah? So that is not Sharia. These are some general guidelines. Fairness, justice, transparency, and honesty are the fundamental value of human and Islamic Sharia value. Socially responsible, eco-friendly, all these are universal values and Sharia and Islamic values also. I'm just going through with general, agreeable, and universal principles. Details is beyond the scope of this presentation. But there are some red lines. Yeah? So the interest riba based, which is in English, is not just the interest, but usury. Usury. Word usury is more appropriate. Interest does not equal riba. Riba is like a wider consideration. And there is a lots of misunderstanding, misconception, and misaligned information about riba and interest. And that's why there is a confusion. Like word alcohol does not mean wine. Alcohol is a chemical thing, and there are thousands of other different types of alcohol. But general perception is alcohol is haram, which is not an untenable proposition. Ambiguity, gharar, and unfairness, this is universally not liked, but in any relationship where there is ambiguity and uncertainty, unfairness is not allowed. Trade in sinful activities, muharramat, is prohibited. So when investing in the stock market or entering into partnership, one has to be careful that the fundamental and core value or core activity should be halal. Speculation and gambling is not allowed. So like stock market, speculative trade, for forex speculative trade, all the trade which is fictitious and just the casino-like playing in the stock market will not be allowed and tolerated in Sharia. And no underlying assets, tangible and intangible, like CDs, convertibles, and derivatives, all sorts of exotic terminology which has been invented in the financial world. Even the federal Fed controller in the United States, he said, I don't understand what is the convertible, but it is practiced in the market and it is traded over the counter in the stock market. So there are some ambiguous and some dubious types of instruments and practices in the casino-like stock markets, and there is no moral uh, layer to those things to 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 make it regulated. Regulation free is the motto in the financial world today. But this is just like a very broader outline. Each one can be explained in a further like detailed manner. But let us understand that out of these maxims, rule of thumbs, and restrictions comes the fundamental characteristics of Islamic finance. So, uh, riba, which is red area, red, red lines, gharar, which is just you have seen, freedom, free from gharar, mean it should not have any environmental impact, which is derogatory to human uh, life. And then freedom of contract, there should be like free, sufficient freedom, less interference from the central control or market control or price control and things like that. So these are the fundamental Islamic economics value, free from price control and manipulation, which is, we know that stock markets and the global financial markets are done. Free from gambling, of course, the casino-like activities are not allowed. And entitlement to transaction at fair price. So fair price is also a concept in Sharia, that exorbitant pricing, exorbitant profiting, and exploitation is not allowed. System grounded on moral and ethical basis. So the terms of reference of Islamic finance is clearly defined by Sharia. It is not left to the markets or the regulators to do as markets want it. Promote equity. Equity means distribution of wealth among the total participants should be on equitable ground. No group should be made disadvantaged. Entitlement to equal and adequate, accurate information for transparency. So these are some of the fundamental values, and of course, promoting public interest and maslaha beneficial to the general society. These are the summary of the Islamic financial or economic system values based on the previous maxioms. These are translated into the practice into the Islamic institution. So, I mean, beyond this general, I mean, in specific fields like investment products, like when we uh, put our money for investment purposes in fixed deposits or uh, or partnership or partnership with labor and capital, then all these things from zero risk to full risk sharing are available at the moment very scantily. So like ISA and capital protected accounts are available here in UK and everywhere. Child trust fund is Sharia compliant, children's savings, and there is a equity global Islamic equity fund. There are multiple of them, and some more examples from US is coming here. Takaful, the insurance is some not available in the Western world, but in the Muslim world it is available because of the market things. It's not available based on the Islamic Sharia point of view. Fixed income and variable income products are there, like real estate property funds. There are available. Sukuk, like Islamic bonds, Musharaka and Ijara-based bonds are universally now traded on the international markets. Pension and hedge funds are also available. Some names are coming. I'm not here to do any publicity for any commercial entities. I'm just here to promote the concept rather than companies and products. Yeah? Although I can do that, just for the illustration purposes, I have put this thing that, like in UK we enjoy the Islamic Bank of Britain, which is now called Al Rayyan Bank, and there is a Gatehouse Bank, and there are some Pakistani banks, UBL and Habib Bank is also having Islamic windows, as they call. But Al Rayyan and Gatehouse are fully, and there are other half a dozen full-fledged Sharia compliant banks. Yeah, and in US and UK also there is a Wahid investment fund, and there is a property fund called Yielders, and there are other crowd funds which I'm just giving here as an example. Yeah? Not as a like a representative from them, or not promoting anybody, and I may not be advisor to most of them. I'm just mentioning what is ground reality, that there are selective products available based on Islamic Sharia, and it can be regarded as halal in this financial market where there is we always struggle to find the proper avenue for our investment, savings, and our other financial needs. The major needs in the Western world and Europe and US is the housing market, because no one can save up to be able to pay cash for the house. So the capital formation is done in such a way that no one can, even the salaries or savings are not sufficient. So, so the capitalist institutions help is needed to even get the minimum properties. So, based on the current prevailing cultural and practices across the globe, Sharia scholars have come up with something called diminishing musharaka, declining balance in US is called uh, declining balance partnership. So the house is purchased by in partnership with the customer and the institution, like 10 or 15, 20% from customer, 80% financing from the financiers, and then slowly customer buying out the share of the financial institution and paying the rent for the rest of the house which they don't own. So like 0 year, it starts with the like 10%, then in 5 years you own 20%, and 10 years, 15 years, and over 15 year terms, you are supposed to buy all the shares of the financial institution based on pure musharaka, pure equity purchase and rental. So dual arrangement of equity purchase and rentals. And here is the full detail step by step as it is practiced here in UK, Canada, and US. I mean, Islamic jurist uh, board of US and the UK, they have all extensive comments on each and every product, and you can visit their website. I have seen most of them, and they are fairly commented, and depending on availability, one can see that this is the biggest asset people purchase, apart from like vocational other needs, uh, other consumer durable and other financial things. There are other revenues, but this is the biggest investment and saving one has to do. And for that, Alhamdulillah, there is a fair amount of arrangement, maybe not sufficient for everyone, but and this is as much Islamic as it can be, given the taxation system, given the regulation system, given the financial constraint and the market constraint, which is there in the United States, Canada, and Europe, all over Europe and UK. At the end, really, now I have just gone through the various like financial stages of financial lifestyle of a Muslim. Not all the needs are fulfilled according to Islamic Sharia, but some major needs are fulfilled, Alhamdulillah. So I'm not claiming that it is full-fledged possibility that we are free to do anything, everything in Western Hemisphere. But in like Malaysia, Pakistan, and the Gulf, there are like more and more availability of products and whatever is needed based on Islamic Sharia. So those of us who choose to be compliant with Sharia, they will have the in supply. Uh, Whether they are fully aware of it or not is a different matter. So at the end, really, I will just summarize the all the points which I have covered in 3 slides. Summary of Islamic perspective on money, wealth, and property, and interrelationship with man and God Almighty. So, what is money to do with Allah and our relationship with Allah and our relationship with, you know, our akhirah? So, these are some really bullet points, and as I mentioned in the beginning, in the Quran, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentions that this is source of sustenance. Ja'alallahu lakum qiyama, ornament of life and the world. Zina is called in money, wealth, and property. Sweet and green is called in the hadith. Inna hadal mal hulwatun khadiratun. Gift of God in Surah Al-Mulk or Surah Al-Jumu'ah. Fadlillah. These are the few descriptions of the money, wealth, and property. And source of investment for retirement and life after death. So like the money invested at youth age is source for retirement, anything we spend during lifetime is our deposit investment in the Akhirah bank in form of sawab. The above average or below average money, wealth, and property is source of temptations and according to Quran, and source of trial and testation from Allah. So like above average or below average, both are really, this is in Surah Al-Fajr, that Amma al-insan iza mabtalahu فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرم وإذا مبتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانا. So this is both temptation, trials. So average life or middle class life is more, encouraged. The status symbol, money and wealth, is not necessary symbol of God's pleasure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. Then further, bullet points are that splendor display of money and wealth causes jealousy and causes us to be near to shaitan. Innal mubazzirina kanu ikhwana ash-shayateen. Best of money, wealth, and property is what is earned by own hands, labor, and sweat. And the Prophet Dawud alayhi salam used to do it despite being prophet, despite being king, having the state resources, but he preferred to eat by the fruit of his own hands' work. Yeah? Sources of purification of heart and actions. Root word of zakat and tazkiyah is same. So money is an instrument and tool of brushing off and fine-tuning our morality, our faith, and our akhirah. Source of eradication of rancor of hearts. Giving gift and exchange of money and support to each other is source of tahaddu, tahabbu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And source of rebellion against God, commandment, atheism. What we see in affluent societies, that like 60-70% people are atheists now because of the affluency. Innal insana, in Surah Al-Iqra, Surah Al-Alaq, it says, Innal insana la yatgha ar-ra'ahu istaghna. When people are affluent, they rebel and they become atheists. And the survey is that US is suffering from 60%, and UK and Europe is nearly 65-70% atheism flourishing due to prosperity and things like that. Further, the last slide is that money, wealth have qualitative extra value if it has changed hands in satisfactory manner, i.e. no compulsion, no coercive persuasion, like hyper marketing, hyper salesman. Hence, modern concept of customer relationship management is very friendly and very much akin to Sharia commandments. Yeah, I mean, I presented a paper in Harvard about this, like a qualitative aspect of money. Yeah, the qualitative extra value has there is a value at each and every stage: acquisition, consumption, distribution, and investment. Next bullet point is legitimate sourcing of money, wealth, and property has a good spiritual health effect on possessor and consumer of property. in terms of causing to live happily and performing good, useful deeds, Quran and Hadith. This is the culmination of the textual evidence from there. And illegitimate money wealth leads only to more illegitimate chain reaction. So going to Hajj with the haram income is not welcome. Nothing purifying anybody. Any charity done by haram is not accepted in the eyes of God. And financial misconduct is more serious than moral misconduct, according to Hadith of Rasulullah. Because moral misconduct is a personal, rebellion, but financial is like has this ripple effect on others also. So, like if our misconduct is financial, then whoever is affected by that misconduct, they all have to be implicated and sought forgiveness. So, for instance, if there is a defrauding the public fund, uh, acquiring money from the unlawful claim and resort on public fund has like hundreds of claimant from whose pockets we siphon the money. So just asking forgiveness from Allah is not sufficient in the financial misconduct. It has to be sought the from those people whose rights and obligations has suffered as a result of our financial misconduct. So here I think in 45 minutes I have summarized my summary and given you a bird eye view of what are the current background to the situation of financial and economic situation, result of development over the last few hundred years. And then we have only 70 years of history and concentrated effort across the globe to claim back our ground and make Sharia prevalent again. So Sharia or ethical investment, ethical finance is gaining ground, inshallah. So I will open myself to the question and answer if I have overlooked any matter or if I mean, I cannot answer question about any specific product or company because it is up to them to do, whoever is claiming to be Sharia compliant, they should produce some credible scholarly deliberation to support their things. So here I will stop presentation and I will open myself to any questions from anywhere. And I may not be able to give information for each and every region of the world.
Thank you very much, and Jazakallah khair, Mufti Barkatulla Sahib, for your presentation. And I also want to thank all the listeners who have joined the WCMIR Open Forum. I want to share with you that WCMIR holds open forum on relevant topics that are of common interest to people on last Sunday of every month. So if you visit our website, www.wcmir.org, you will find announcement for WCMIR Open Forum at least a week before the last Sunday of every month. And I also would like to welcome your suggestion on the topics that you want to hear from during our open forum so that we can find suitable scholars who can deal with those topics appropriately. As you know that by the name, WCMIR is an interfaith organization. We believe that in today's turbulent world, a lot of problems issues can be resolved by understanding each other, by reaching out to other faith communities and sharing what Islam provides on those issues and what we can do together to resolve conflicts and bring people closer together in establishing peace and prosperity in the world.